Alright, I finished this book, Metro 2033 by Dmitry Glukhovsky. A little dog has just appeared behind it. Oh my god, that's so distracting. The short version is, I have mixed feelings about it, and if I had to rate it out of 5, I would give it a 3. Keeping in mind I have no preconceptions about this whole thing of it being based on a game. I have no idea what the games are like. But, so, before I get into that, we'll just go over the blurb and stuff. A world in darkness, a single hope, okay. And blurb, and heavily discounted. A smash hit around Europe, the highly acclaimed Metro 2033 plunges you into a claustrophobic world where hope is scarce and despair reigns supreme. The year is 2033, the world has been reduced to rubble, humanity is nearly extinct, a few thousand live on, not knowing if they are the only survivors on the planet. They live in the Moscow Metro, the biggest air raid shelter ever built. It is humanity's last refuge. It is a world without a tomorrow, with no room for dreams, plans, hopes. Feelings have given way to instinct, the most important of which is survival, survival at any price. VDNKH. Every time I try and read it in my head, the KH throws me off. Is the northernmost inhabited station on its line and still remains secure, but now a new and terrible threat has appeared. Artyom? Is that how you pronounce it? A young man living in VD is given the task of penetrating to the heart of the metro to alert everyone to the awful danger. He holds the future of his native station in his hands, the future of the metro, and maybe the whole of humanity, and I need a drink. I swallowed some dust. Video is off to a great start, by the way. Yeah, okay. So, I don't know how much of what I say will be spoilers, given that this has been out for a while. Oh, it has this map. This map. Let's start with the map. The map was super infuriating because some of them are mislabeled, and then some of the ways that this is labeled are not the exact names in here, so it took me a while to figure that out. Because on this one it says Prospect Mirror, and then in here it's like Prospect Mirror, and is it even spelled the same? I don't even know. And there's just like lots of little things like that where I'm like, what even is happening? And then trying to figure out how to read that map because I guess we don't have transfer stations the way that they do. So the map was the first thing that was confusing, and I had to like, you know, Google things to even figure out like where's my frame of reference. And maybe it's not that important, but then there are times where they're saying they're looking at the map and this connects to that, and I'm like, are you sure? Anyway, so that's the first thing. When was this? 2007. Okay, 2007. Of course, it was originally published in Russian, and so this is the English translation, and it shows. That might be why the map is all screwed up too. Yeah, sorry, I really just choked on something. Oh, what an amazing review I'm doing. I could start again, but I'm not going to. Yeah, no, sometimes it's hard to read, and sometimes I think there might be references that I don't entirely understand because it's an English translation. But then there are times where, like, words are repeated, which are obviously not meant to be repeated, like, you know, was are kind of thing. Or it'll just, like, skip words, and, like, as the book progresses, those errors seem to get worse and worse and more noticeable. So that was an interesting thing. You know, they thank a translator, but I don't know if they had an editor really look over it properly. So that's the thing. But no, the story is the most... I know, I'm already nitpicked some of the technical details, but the story is the important thing. And it's kind of an interesting one. Like, sometimes it's really good, and then sometimes it's such a slog to get through. So, like, there were days where I could finish a chapter in one sitting, and then there were days where I just needed to take a lot of breaks. And, you know, so what's unusual about this, but, you know, someone, I can't remember who, was telling me that Russian books do it a lot, is like, there'll be random introspective passages that go on for quite a while. And then there'll be the actual action, and sometimes, like, the introspective stuff, or the memories of flashbacks, sometimes they're actually quite interesting. Other times, the introspections, I'm just like, get on with it. And then sometimes the action is good when it picks up. And then sometimes the action is like, Are you sure? So yeah, it's a mixed bag in terms of that sort of readability for me. And then the story as a whole, where he's like trying to get to the middle of the metro to report this thing, and then how they resolve it. It's just like, I don't know, it's kind of like the logic of the story does my head in a bit, because like this hunter guy, he goes off on this suicide mission, and his only backup plan is some random kid, like adult kid, kinda. Like, really, that's your backup plan? And you find out later that he's got all these connections and he can't send word to a single one of his connections. He has to send this random kid. It's strange. And, you know, and then the book also can't make up its mind whether it's set in the real world or not. Like, when you first start reading it, it seems like it's set in the real world, and then there's weird stuff going on, and you're like, okay, I can accept one or two weird things. But as the book goes on, it becomes more and more sci-fi rather than trying to be a realistic, grungy, post-apocalyptic thing. So that got a bit weird, and it's like it almost doesn't want to commit one way or the other. Like, it'll try and bring it back to reality, and sometimes like it'll excuse itself with these introspective passages of like, what if he's just imagining it all? And then other times it'll be like, no, we're going the supernatural route. And one of the funny things is like, a lot of convenient shit happens to him. And just as I was getting to a point in the book where I'm like, this is ridiculous writing, it's just convenient contrivance over and over and over. You know, like, he almost dies and he just happens to get saved by some people at the right time. And then he has no resources, he's covered in poop, and then someone comes and washes him up and, you know, sets him up so that he can keep going on his way. And it's just like... And, you know, he just happens to be the only person who can survive, you know, weird things going on in the tunnels. And, yeah, after a while it kind of gets old. It's like he's going to get into some other issue and something else will save him that has nothing to do with his effort or very little to do with his efforts. And it's like... I mean, on the upside, we get to see a decent chunk of this world because things keep happening to him. He somehow manages to get through... quite a decent chunk of the different places, and you also hear about other places that he doesn't actually visit. But it's just... And then just as I was starting to be like, gosh, is it just going to be a series of conveniences? He actually has his own introspection about that and comes across people who are like telling him basically that, yeah, if this stuff keeps happening to you, it means that, you know, you're on a path and blah blah, and I don't know. I wasn't really a huge fan of it, and I know at the end they try and explain it away, but I wasn't convinced by that either. Before I get to the ending of it though, another issue I have is just like the conception of the post-apocalyptic world. Like, yes, running into the metro makes sense, but the way that radiation works and the mutants and all this kind of stuff, and like particularly when they get to the surface and there are all these creatures running around and these weirdly evolved things, I'm just like, that's not how it works. I'm sorry, I know I'm like that actually kind of whatever, but I just found that really difficult. I mean, it does seem like a, 20 years ago idea of radiation maybe, but, Chernobyl happened in the 80s, and we didn't get any mutants out of that. We just got, like a pack of dogs who breed quickly and die young, which is kind of what happens in nature, and they're doing okay, and the whole, nature in that area is still going. It's not actually a dead wasteland. It's actually doing better without us. There are no like weird pterodactyl things. There are no weird wolf bear things. There are no ant people. It's just, and there's no weird bat things in libraries. Yeah, so I found it really hard to suspend disbelief just because, like, I don't know, misunderstandings of radiation are a little bit of a bug for me. It's sort of a pet annoyance. I guess maybe partly because I live in Australia where nuclear energy is banned and people have these ideas that it's like The Simpsons where everything's glowing green and you've got three-eyed fish, which is not how it works. Yeah, I struggled with that. But, then again, if they're going the supernatural route, fucking why not? It's just like, I think what bothered me about the inaccuracies is that reluctance to commit either to the real world or to supernatural bullshit. Like, if it was just all in on the supernatural bullshit, it would be much easier for me to be like, okay, it's magical radiation. But yeah, it kind of doesn't know which one it wants to be. So there's that. Another thing it doesn't know what it wants, like, that's kind of related is this whole thing of, like, the psychic, powers, telepathic, whatever, because that ends up coming up a lot, like the Dark Ones and the cannibals who have their hypnosis-y powers, and, even that weird old man Khan who he meets is, like, clearly has something going on with him, and then the voices in the tunnel, like, there's all this weird mental shenanigans that I guess we'd just call telepathy. And yeah, like that's kind of more of this supernatural bullshit. But when it comes to, like, the resolution and the whole thing about the Dark Ones, I'm just like, I know that people are like, oh, because, like, I tried not to look up people's reactions too much, but I did get a little bit curious, and so from what I did see is people are like, oh yeah, it's a message about how humans will just blow the shit out of everything without trying to understand it, and, like, how horrible we are as a species, that we destroyed our one avenue to salvation or whatever. But I didn't get that. Like, as it kind of got towards the end and, like, he's having that realization and he's having that hallucination about them talking to him, it did make me think of Ender's Game, where he accidentally blows up, a species that had decided to leave humans alone. But in both Ender's Game, I only saw the movie, I didn't read the book, and in this, I've only read the book, haven't seen anything about the games. In both cases, humans were provoked, and provoked quite badly, because, like, Ender's Game, it was this huge deal being like, they had no hope until they took out the Queen. And then in this, like, the Dark Ones were this relentless force who you do find out are killing humans in the end. I don't know, like, they're vague about it at the start, but by the time shit hits the fan, they have killed one of his friends, he finds out. And we're supposed to believe that they were seeking peace. And, like, the whole opening of the gate happened when he was a kid, and 10 years later or whatever it is, 5 to 10 years later, they still haven't been able to, do their mind mojo to solve the problem. It's just like, I don't know. And he has all these dreams, but then everyone's having dreams and nightmares about these creatures. I struggle to buy that. Like, it's kind of not done in any way. Maybe they don't understand humans, but all forms of life kind of get the idea that if something attacks you, you probably should stay away. Although the one caveat is humans eating spicy food, and clearly the plant does not want to be eaten, but we eat it anyway. I don't eat it. I don't like spicy food. I like to think I'm a bit more sensible than the rest of you. But, spicy food is a little bit different to sentient beings firing at you with bullets and flamethrowers. That's kind of, a little bit of spiciness on your tongue isn't going to kill most people unless it's, like, the extreme spiciness that we bred ourselves. Natural spiciness was never, it's not that bad. I don't buy it. I don't buy this whole thing, oh, we were just trying to make peace. We didn't like that the humans were attacking us, but we were trying to come and make peace. And it's like, yeah, by being super scary, by telepathically instilling fear in everyone, that's something the Dark Ones did. Like, it could be that they just misunderstood how to send the signals and the human brain couldn't handle the blah, 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 blah. Okay, but they kept doing it, and they kept coming in waves, and they kept, ignoring bullets and stuff. And then when they finally did break through into the station, they started killing people, and they ripped apart people from, I think that's what they did, and they killed, you know, the main character's friend, and there are all these people who have all these issues. It's like, I'm not buying that they were there for peace. So what was on my mind while he's having that vision is like this, sure, it could be that, but it also feels like a last-ditch effort for them to try and avert the danger. Like, what if telepathically they can read his mind that he's watching them as the missiles are about to hit, and they're like, oh shit, we've got to try and stop this, and so they connect with him mentally, but it's too late, they can't get him to avert the missiles. But they're gonna make him feel guilty about it, aren't they? And it, like, isn't it convenient that the message only comes across right at the very end? It makes me think of Galaxy Quest. The timer always stops at 1 second left. You know, oh, it's gonna be dramatic. They're only gonna break through to him at the very last moment. I'm like, yeah, okay, bullshit. I just don't like that kind of obvious, you know, we're trying to make it super tense by making, oh, isn't it tragic that it was at the last minute? I didn't buy that. So, like, there's good ideas in terms of, like, survival post-apocalyptically in the metro, and they have to send people up to the surface to get them resources, and the bargaining system that they've got. I don't think bullets is the right currency, because they're still using bullets to shoot things, and if you shoot a lot at once, like, wouldn't you start to see that as super expensive? And yet they still manage to go to war, so I feel like that would not be the currency. But whatever. So some of the world building is good, some of the world building not so much. Like, the things where things are more sensible make sense. And then there's a whole lot of bullshit. So yeah, and then there's like good bits where, you know, interesting things, and then there's not good bits where dumb stuff happens. Was there anything else I had to say about this book? Well, at least there's no romance. And then, I don't know, some of his choices, like how he got captured by the fascists. I'm like, I don't even know how, you know, the Feeble would survive in that situation for that long. It just doesn't seem realistic. And I mean, the old guy who needed his medication, how long is medication gonna last? Because even today, medication has expiry dates. And yeah, you can keep using them, but the efficacy goes down. And if no one is producing those medications anymore, good luck to you. Yeah. So it's kind of a mixed bag for me, especially because it started off like it was trying to be realistic and then went supernatural. I also struggle to imagine what the game must be like. Like, they must have added more action, because there's not actually, I thought because it was based on a game that there would be more action. But really it's just like he gets through another tunnel, he meets some people, he talks to people, there's some weird philosophy, there's a little bit of tension as people are like, who's dangerous, we don't know. And then he'll get captured, and he doesn't even do that much fighting. He's just kind of, you know, taken along by the plot and by the mission that he's given, and, you know, he keeps having to try and convince himself to keep going with the mission, but it's a bit like, is it really that important? I don't know. And then, I can believe that the missiles could still be working. Maybe. A little bit. But yeah, I don't know. And then I think the whole thing about the D6 line, where they go, you know, in the Kremlin's secret passages, I imagine that's probably more impactful if you're a Russian reader who knows that kind of lore, because I know shit about Russia. So yeah, and then that whole thing about the, like, was it like a sludge monster, or what even bioweapons they're talking about that would just sentiently form this huge liquid and only come up where sometimes, some of the monsters in this, I'm just like, by what mechanism? You know, like, if it was, like, it could be a swarm of ants, maybe? No, but they made it seem like it's a liquid, so what on earth is going on there? And, like, it must give off some kind of gas that makes you funny, but then I don't know, man. I don't know where some of those ideas come up, and that's why I have to think it's more of like a sci-fi. It's more like supernatural bullshit, kind of. So yeah, I'm not going to be reading the next one because there were some parts, especially towards the end, it just became more and more of a slog. Like, he gets to Polis, he gets to the center, and they don't even give a shit about what he's saying, except for like this secret society who then happen to send him on a mission where he happens to be the only survivor. And there's like obvious shit that happens too, like when he's in the library with his priest mate or whatever, and the guy stops to tie his shoelace and says, "Oh, you go on without me," and I'm like, holy cliches, Batman. I know this is not going to go well, and I'm sorry I did end up saying spoilers because I mean, it's a 20-year-old book, and chances are if you've clicked on this, it's because you know something about it. So yeah, so mixed feelings. And, you know, with all the different words for places and all that, and also, like, one thing I struggled is the descriptions of stations and the descriptions of places in Moscow. I've never been there. I don't know what a Russian station looks like. I'm trying to imagine things, and, like, you know, when I finally looked up pictures, it started to make a bit more sense if I found the right station, because some of them have the same name, but there's, like, a connecting thing, and they're kind of different. In Australia, like, we have the stations can be quite different. Like, you could have a middle platform with trains going on the side, or you could have the trains going in the middle and the platforms are on the side. And then when you have multiple ones, you have multiple platforms. And so I'm trying to get my head around this. And, like, that's even the case with underground ones. Sometimes you have, like, two sets, like you have to go down more steps to get to the next level of trains. And so yeah, and we don't have these arches like the ones in Moscow. They seem to be quite elaborate, which kind of goes with that whole, you know, communist monumentalism, you know, trying to make these big grand statements. So yeah, and when he's like in the beginning describing the arches that they build their little houses in, I'm just like, what is that? And then trying to find online. And then yeah, when they talk about being on the surface and these different locations and like what things are like, they're very vague descriptions, so I have no idea what I'm supposed to be imagining a lot of the time, and just vague impressions of things. And I'm not sure, like, is it meant to be vague or is it meant to assume that we know something about Moscow? I'm not sure. And it was too confusing for me to just let it go. Like, the impression of it wasn't satisfying enough. And I think that's one of the troubles of making something so heavily based on a real location. Like, you could write something that's based in, for example, like I could write something that's based in Sydney or based in an Aussie town or whatever, and if you don't specify the place, you can be somewhat vague. Like Animorphs. Oh, it's behind all my DVDs, but I've got a whole set of Animorphs behind there, and you never really know which part of America it is. There are hints dropped, and so eventually people work out where it is. And but, you know, like, you don't have to imagine specific places and things are described enough. And I'm like, okay, me as an Aussie who had never been to America at that point, I could just imagine stuff and not worry about what it's like. But like this Moscow, and also because the architecture is so, you know, distinctive, so it feels like, oh, I have no idea what they're talking about. I have to look it up. So I spent a lot of time Googling things and Googling words. Yeah. And then, like, looking on Google Maps to try and figure out what am I even meant to be imagining, because, yeah, it's not entirely well described. And then there's some strange groups, and I get it, you know, people always come up with ideas. The Great Worm was a fun one. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could probably dig into more specific events in that, but I do not care to at this point. So anyway, that's that. I gotta get another book to read. I haven't bought one yet, but I will find something. Someone's having a drink. Is he gonna come out? I'll just give him a moment and see. While we're waiting for him, there he cares about a silly book when we got a fluffy dog? Yay! Yay! Will you hop up? Hop up! Wave! Good boy, you're getting so good at that. Ah, yeah. What do you think? It was a hard read sometimes. I had to stop like mid-chapter, not even at a natural break at times. Yeah? What do you think? Not really into it? Yeah, it's a book. He's like, why are you showing me this? That's you. Bye. Oh, you can lie down, sweetie. All right. Yeah, so mixed feelings about it. Like, at times it was genuinely interesting and exciting. At other times it was like, oh my god, get on with it. The guy, he has so much self-doubt. Is there a lot of character development? He goes on an adventure, he expands his world a little bit, but otherwise I'm sort of like, he's still this... I don't know how much character development there is, because he's still, like, even when things sort of accelerate, he's still being dragged around by other people who are much more competent than him. And, like, did they really need him in the end? I don't know. But they drag him around and he's still struggling to get through every part of everything. And he kind of just goes with whatever the situation is. Like, yeah, there's times where he's making his own decisions, but it just feels like mostly he's, I don't know, adrift in the situation happening to him. And I at some point, I'm like, yeah, I don't know, and I found it really hard to, especially towards the end. So yeah, 3 out of 5. I don't completely hate it, but there's enough that annoys me about it, and it's not balanced out enough by the good points, so yeah. Bye.